For a long time, human history followed a neat and comfortable storyline. First came farming, then permanent villages. Only after that did religion, ritual, and monumental architecture emerge. It made sense. Food surplus created stability, stability created society, and society created gods. That sequence was taught, repeated, and rarely questioned, until a quiet hill in southeastern Turkey made that entire model collapse. Göbekli Tepe does not look revolutionary at first glance. It rises gently from the landscape near modern-day ŞANLIURFA, blending in with countless other artificial mounds scattered across the Fertile Crescent. For decades, it was dismissed as just another prehistoric settlement debris pile. Nothing about its surface hinted at anything extraordinary. No towering ruins, no visible temples, just stone fragments and scattered tools. Everything changed in the 1990s. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe if you're enjoying Primal Roots. When systematic excavations began, archaeologists quickly realized they were not dealing with a village, a fortification, or a burial ground. What emerged from beneath the soil was something no one expected to exist at that time: massive stone structures built with precision, planning, and symbolic intent, dating back to around 9600 BCE. That date alone was enough to trigger disbelief. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to Primal Roots. This was long before agriculture was established, long before pottery, metal tools, or domesticated animals. Thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt, millennia before Stonehenge. According to everything science believed, the people of this era should not have been capable of building anything remotely like this, yet the evidence was undeniable. Göbekli Tepe consists of multiple circular enclosures, each defined by towering limestone pillars carved into a distinctive T-shape. Some stand over 6 meters tall and weigh more than 10 tons. These were not rough stones dragged randomly into place. They were quarried, shaped, transported, and erected with remarkable accuracy. The layouts follow clear geometric patterns, suggesting careful planning rather than spontaneous construction, and the builders were not farmers. They were hunter-gatherers. This is where the first major fracture in the traditional narrative appears. Nomadic groups without permanent homes, without written language, without draft animals or advanced tools, somehow coordinated large-scale construction projects that would challenge even later societies. The technical question alone is staggering, but the deeper mystery lies elsewhere. Why build this at all? The pillars are not blank. They are covered in relief carvings of animals: snakes, foxes, wild boars, lions, vultures, scorpions. These are not random decorations. The same creatures appear repeatedly, positioned deliberately, often facing inward toward the center of the enclosures. Some pillars show abstract symbols whose meanings remain unknown. Others display what appear to be stylized human arms and hands, resting along the sides of the stone, as if the pillars themselves represent beings rather than objects. These details matter. There is no evidence that Göbekli Tepe was ever a place where people lived. No domestic hearths, no storage rooms, no signs of daily household activity. This was not a settlement. It was a destination. People came here for a reason, stayed temporarily, and left. Everything points to ritual. The structures functioned as ceremonial spaces designed for gatherings that were likely intense, emotional, and deeply symbolic. Whatever happened here mattered enough to justify enormous collective effort. This suggests something radical. Long before humans organized around food production, they may have organized around belief. For decades, religion was assumed to be a byproduct of complex societies. Göbekli Tepe flips that assumption on its head. It suggests that shared rituals and symbolic systems may have come first, and that they played a direct role in shaping social cooperation on a large scale. To bring hundreds of people together repeatedly, to motivate them to perform physically exhausting labor without obvious material reward, requires something powerful. Fear alone is not enough. Survival alone is not enough. What works is meaning, shared stories, shared symbols, a sense of connection to forces larger than the individual. In that sense, Göbekli Tepe may represent one of the earliest known experiments in large-scale social cohesion driven by belief. The animal imagery reinforces this interpretation. Many of the creatures carved into the pillars were not common prey. They were dangerous predators or animals associated with death and transformation. Vultures, for example, appear prominently. Birds often linked in later cultures to the soul, the sky, or the transition between life and death. Snakes coil along stone surfaces in repeating patterns, evoking danger, renewal, or hidden knowledge. These are not hunting scenes. They are symbolic narratives. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were not simply reacting to their environment, they were interpreting it. Their world was filled with meaning, populated by forces that demanded recognition, respect, or appeasement. This requires abstract thought, shared mythology, and a collective understanding of reality that goes far beyond basic survival instincts. And that is the real shock. Göbekli Tepe proves that the human mind reached full symbolic maturity far earlier than once believed. The capacity for myth, ritual, and collective imagination was already in place. These were not primitive humans fumbling towards civilization. They were cognitively modern, capable of planning years ahead, transmitting knowledge across generations, and organizing complex social events. Even more intriguing is what happened next. After centuries of use around 8000 BCE, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Not abandoned, not destroyed by enemies, not erased by natural disaster. The enclosures were carefully filled in with soil, stone, and debris, as if sealed on purpose. This was a massive undertaking in itself, requiring just as much coordination as the construction. Someone, or some group, made the decision to close the site permanently. Why? No one knows for sure. But the act feels intentional, symbolic, almost ritualistic in its own right. It suggests a transition, a conscious ending of one phase of life and the beginning of another. And that transition may be the key. Soon after Göbekli Tepe was buried, evidence of early agriculture begins to appear in nearby regions. Wild grains show signs of domestication. Seasonal camps start becoming more permanent. The way humans related to the land was changing. In this light, Göbekli Tepe may represent the final chapter of a world built entirely on ritual gathering, a world where belief unified scattered groups before fields, fences, and property reshaped society. If humans built temples before houses, if spirituality preceded farming, then the origin of civilization looks very different from what textbooks once claimed. It was not hunger that brought people together first, it was meaning. And buried beneath that quiet hill in Turkey lies proof that from the very beginning, humanity was driven not only by the need to survive, but by the need to understand, to belong, and to believe. As the stones of Göbekli Tepe emerged from the soil, it became increasingly clear that their importance did not lie only in their size or age, but in what they revealed about the human mind. Every enclosure followed a consistent internal logic. Every pillar stood where it did for a reason. Nothing about the site suggested improvisation or casual decoration. Instead, it reflected a shared symbolic system understood by all who participated in its construction and use. The carvings are the clearest evidence of this hidden order. Animals appear again and again, but not as part of everyday life. These were not scenes of hunting, cooking, or survival. Many of the creatures depicted were dangerous, elusive, or rarely consumed. Snakes dominate several pillars, arranged in flowing, almost hypnotic patterns. Foxes appear in prominent positions, often isolated, as if carrying special meaning. Birds of prey are shown near headless human figures, a motif that later cultures would associate with death, transformation, or the journey of the soul. From a scientific perspective, this points to a fully developed symbolic imagination. Göbekli Tepe was not just architecture, it was a physical expression of myth. The people who gathered there were participating in shared narratives that explained the world, structured fear, and gave meaning to forces they could not control. This level of abstraction requires advanced cognitive abilities, long-term memory, metaphorical thinking, and collective agreement on symbolic codes. The spatial organization of the site reinforces this conclusion. The circular enclosures are carefully planned, with two massive central pillars surrounded by smaller ones, all facing inward. This inward focus suggests that whatever rituals took place were meant to draw attention toward the center, possibly toward performances, ceremonies, or symbolic acts now lost to time. The design creates a sense of enclosure and separation from the outside world, a classic feature of sacred spaces across cultures. Some researchers have suggested astronomical alignments, proposing that certain structures may correspond to celestial events or seasonal cycles. While these interpretations remain debated, the underlying point is clear. The builders possessed observational knowledge and the ability to embed that knowledge into architecture. This required coordination over long periods, shared goals, and the transmission of complex ideas across generations. Neuroscience offers insight into why such a site could exist before farming. The human brain evolved not only to solve practical problems, but to bond, synchronize, and cooperate. Collective rituals trigger neurological mechanisms that strengthen trust and social cohesion. When groups chant, move, or focus attention together, their emotional states align. This creates a powerful sense of belonging and shared identity. Göbekli Tepe likely functioned as a neurological and social amplifier. By bringing different groups together around intense symbolic experiences, it reinforced cooperation beyond family or tribe. People who might otherwise compete for resources were united by shared beliefs. In this context, large-scale collaboration became possible without centralized authority or coercion. This helps explain how such monumental construction was achieved without evidence of rigid hierarchy. Excavations reveal no palaces, elite residences, or richly adorned tombs. There are no clear markers of individual power or inherited status. Authority seems to have been embedded in the ritual system itself, meaning not force, organized behavior. Food remains found at the site support this idea. Large quantities of animal bones suggest communal feasting rather than everyday consumption. These gatherings would have required careful planning, coordination of hunting, and distribution of resources. Participation in ritual likely came with social obligations to contribute, to attend, to remember. In this way, belief structured economic behavior long before formal institutions existed. Another striking feature of Göbekli Tepe is what it does not emphasize. Unlike many later prehistoric sites, there is little focus on fertility symbols or clearly identifiable female figures. Instead, the imagery centers on animals, hybrid forms, and abstract symbols. This suggests a worldview less concerned with reproduction alone and more focused on transformation, danger, death, and the boundary between human and non-human realms. Such themes are consistent with societies deeply embedded in nature. For hunter-gatherers, survival depended on reading landscapes, animal behavior, and seasonal changes. Predators and scavengers were not just threats, but symbols of powerful forces governing life and death. Rituals may have served as a way to negotiate these forces, to impose symbolic order on an unpredictable world. Over time, subtle changes appear in the architecture. Later enclosures are smaller, less elaborate, with simpler pillars and fewer carvings. This gradual shift suggests that the role of Göbekli Tepe was evolving. At the same time, archaeological evidence from surrounding regions points to early experiments with plant cultivation and animal management. Human life was beginning to change at its foundation. The emergence of agriculture did not happen overnight, nor was it necessarily a deliberate choice. It was a slow process shaped by climate, population pressure, and accumulated knowledge. But once food production became more reliable, the structure of daily life transformed. People no longer needed to travel long distances for ritual gatherings. Social bonds could be maintained within permanent settlements. In this context, Göbekli Tepe may have begun to lose its central role. The sacred was no longer confined to a distant hilltop. It was gradually absorbed into village life, tied to fields, seasons, and cycles of growth. Rituals became more frequent but less monumental. The extraordinary gave way to the routine. This transition helps explain why the site was eventually buried. The act was not random or careless. Each enclosure was intentionally filled, preserving the stones rather than dismantling them. Such behavior suggests respect, closure, and memory. The people who sealed Göbekli Tepe were not rejecting their past. They were marking the end of an era. From a scientific standpoint, this moment represents a threshold in human history. Göbekli Tepe stands at the boundary between a world organized primarily by shared myth and one increasingly shaped by production, permanence, and property. It shows that large-scale cooperation did not begin with farming or cities, but with stories powerful enough to unite people across space and time. The implications extend far beyond archaeology. Göbekli Tepe forces a re-evaluation of what drives human progress. It challenges the assumption that material necessity is the primary engine of social complexity. Instead, it points to meaning, belief, and collective imagination as foundational forces. Long before laws, states, or writing, humans were already capable of creating systems that organized behavior, regulated cooperation, and transmitted values. These systems were not written down. They were carved into stone, enacted through ritual, and embedded in shared experience. Göbekli Tepe does not represent the beginning of civilization in the traditional sense. There were no cities, no kings, no bureaucracies. But it reveals something more fundamental, the moment when humans learned to think together at scale, when belief became a tool for coordination, when the invisible shaped the visible. Buried for thousands of years, the site preserves not just ancient stones, but evidence of a mental revolution, a reminder that before humans mastered the land, they mastered meaning, and that mastery would quietly set the stage for everything that came next. As Göbekli Tepe disappeared beneath layers of carefully placed earth, a profound transformation was unfolding across the surrounding landscape. The sealing of the site did not signal collapse or failure. It marked a turning point in how humans organized their lives, structured their beliefs, and understood their relationship with the world. What followed was not the end of ritual, but its migration into a new social framework, one rooted in permanence, production, and control over nature. Archaeological evidence from southeastern Anatolia shows that soon after the final use of Göbekli Tepe, nearby communities began settling more consistently in fixed locations. Wild grasses, such as einkorn wheat and barley, were gradually domesticated. Animals that had once been hunted selectively started to be managed, enclosed, and bred. These changes unfolded slowly, but their consequences were irreversible. Human groups were no longer moving primarily in response to seasonal abundance. They were reshaping the environment to ensure predictability. From a biological perspective, this shift introduced new pressures. Skeletal remains from early agricultural populations reveal increased signs of nutritional stress, infectious disease, and repetitive physical strain. Farming provided stability in food supply, but at the cost of dietary diversity and health. Yet agriculture offered something hunter-gatherer life could not: surplus. And surplus altered everything. The ability to store food over long periods made accumulation possible. Accumulation created inequality. Inequality demanded regulation. Over time, roles became specialized. Some people farmed, others managed resources, others interpreted signs, seasons, and rituals. Authority began to separate from collective experience and attach itself to individuals or groups. In this new world, the sacred could no longer exist solely as a shared, open ritual space like Göbekli Tepe. Belief systems adapted to sedentary life. Rituals became smaller, more frequent, and closely tied to agricultural cycles: planting, harvest, rain, drought. Spiritual meaning shifted from untamed forces of nature toward the management of land and time. Göbekli Tepe, by contrast, belonged to a different logic. Its builders did not seek to dominate the environment. They gathered to acknowledge forces beyond their control. The monumental effort invested in the site was not aimed at productivity or efficiency, but participation. The value lay in the act itself, in the shared experience of constructing, maintaining, and returning to a place set apart from daily survival. When that mode of life faded, the site was no longer necessary. The deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe suggests a conscious closing of a chapter. Each structure was filled systematically, preserving the pillars rather than dismantling them for reuse. This was not abandonment driven by scarcity or conflict. It was an intentional act of memory. The people involved understood that something fundamental had changed, and they chose to mark that transition physically. From an anthropological standpoint, This behavior aligns with patterns seen in many cultures during periods of deep transformation. Sacred places are often sealed, repurposed or ritually closed when belief systems evolve. The burial of Göbekli Tepe may have served to protect its symbolic power while allowing society to move forward under new rules. As agriculture spread, new forms of spirituality emerged. Shrines appeared within villages, symbols became portable, engraved stones, figurines, markings on tools. Ritual authority increasingly rested with specialists, shamans, elders, early priestly figures. The direct communal engagement with the sacred that defined Göbekli Tepe gave way to mediated experience. This shift had cognitive consequences. The human mind, once oriented toward unpredictable environments and expansive symbolic systems, adapted to repetitive tasks and long-term planning. Time became segmented into seasons and schedules. Memory was externalized through marks, tallies, and eventually writing. The world grew more manageable, but also more constrained. Many later myths seem to echo this loss. Stories of a primordial age, a time when humans lived closer to animals, spirits, or gods, appear across distant cultures. Narratives of a fall, an exile, or a separation between the human and the sacred world recur with striking consistency. Göbekli Tepe offers a plausible material context for the origin of such memories, not as literal events, but as cultural reflections of a real transition. From a scientific perspective, the site forces a reconsideration of progress itself. The rise of civilization is often portrayed as a linear improvement, a steady climb toward complexity and control. Göbekli Tepe complicates that narrative. It reveals that some forms of social and symbolic richness existed before cities, before states, and before written law. The people who built it were not primitive in any meaningful cognitive sense. They possessed advanced abstract thinking, long-term coordination, and a deep understanding of social dynamics. What they lacked was not intelligence, but permanence. Their world was fluid, seasonal, and anchored in shared meaning rather than fixed structures. As societies grew larger and more stratified, those early forms of collective ritual became harder to sustain. Large populations require systems of enforcement, record-keeping, and centralized authority. Meaning becomes regulated. Belief becomes institutionalized. What was once experienced directly becomes interpreted on behalf of others. Göbekli Tepe stands as evidence of a moment before that division, a time when belief did not belong to institutions, but to the group as a whole. When cooperation emerged not from law or coercion, but from shared participation in something transcendent. Modern science continues to excavate the site, but its impact reaches far beyond archaeology. It challenges assumptions in anthropology, cognitive science, and evolutionary theory. It suggests that the drive to create meaning is not a secondary trait layered onto survival, but a core feature of human nature. Humans did not wait for security to invent spirituality. They did not wait for abundance to imagine the sacred. Instead, shared belief may have been the mechanism that made large-scale cooperation possible in the first place. Civilization, in this view, is not the origin of meaning. Meaning is the origin of civilization. Göbekli Tepe also offers a mirror to the present. In a world dominated by technology, efficiency, and fragmentation, it recalls a time when humans gathered without economic incentive, without hierarchy, and without permanence, simply to participate in a shared symbolic universe. It raises uncomfortable questions about what has been gained and what has been lost. The site provides no inscriptions, no names, no explicit doctrines. Its silence is intentional. Meaning was not written down because it was lived. The stones did not explain the beliefs, they embodied them. As long as Göbekli Tepe remained buried, this chapter of human history was invisible. Its discovery did not just add new data to the archaeological record. It exposed a blind spot in how modern societies understand their own origins. It revealed that the foundations of civilization are not only material, but psychological and symbolic. Between the world of mobile hunter-gatherers and the rise of permanent settlements, Göbekli Tepe occupies a narrow but decisive threshold. It marks the moment when humans learn to unite around shared ideas, powerful enough to reshape behavior, labor, and identity on a massive scale. In that sense, it is not merely the oldest known temple. It is a monument to the first time humanity organized itself around meaning alone. And beneath its buried stones lies a simple, unsettling truth. Before humans built cities, they built worlds inside their minds. If this changed how you see human history, subscribe for more science-based stories like this.